The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark, the 13th chapter. Well, Jesus puts it this way. But in those days, after that suffering, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. And the stars will be falling down from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. And then they will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. And then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also when you see these things taking place, you know that he is near at the very gates. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But about that day or hour, no one knows. Neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware. Keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. It's like a man going on a journey, and when he leaves home and puts his slaves in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to be on watch. Therefore keep awake. For you do not know when the master of the house will come in the evening, or at midnight, or at cockcrow, or at dawn. Or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And what I say to you, I say to all. Keep awake. The gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. So, this little vignette that Jesus gives us this morning comes pretty much at the end of his life. Within the next few hours and moments, he will be put on trial and eventually crucified, hanged, and die. He is at his full height of intellectual, emotional, and spiritual maturity. He is as strong and healthy as he is ever going to be, and he is as confused as ever, it sounds like. Because as much as he wants us to keep awake and to say that you never know when the master's going to come, you got to think that after 2,000 years, somebody's going to need a nap. I mean, seriously. Did any of you make lunch plans? Or did you just assume that this was the end? We come here this Advent to expect something, to wait for something, to have our deepest longings met. And Jesus says it'll happen. It'll happen. You just got to be awake and you got to prepare. And the little boy in the back of his room says, "Teacher, it's 2,000 years. Can I go to the bathroom at least?" It happens though, right? Our heads tell us one thing, and our hearts tell us something else. And we come in Advent not necessarily to have our heads rearranged, but to have our hearts met and longed for. As St. Augustine so famously said, our hearts are restless, Lord, until they rest in Thee. And we will never be happy and satisfied until our hearts are finally melded as one with God. And as much as our mind might tell us that we all know that this is another day and another event and one more time and one more Advent, one more time, our hearts are still restless and longing to meet up with God. And so we come here year after year in spite of the fact that the Master's never come back, in spite of the fact that we have waited morning, noon, and night to see something, to have something happen. And most of the time, nothing happens at all. It is just completely boredom. Trust me, the teenagers know this. They've been to church before. I mean, seriously. Have you ever seen those banners before? Have you ever seen the tree before? The candle lit before? Of course. Our heads know. But our hearts have yet to be realized. And of course, that's what brings us to our God in the first place. The reason why Christ is in our lives is to have our hearts finally massaged with love and hope, with peace and promise, in spite of whatever our head sees. I mean, we live in a world, my friends, where black men get shot just for being black. There is no way that your head can ever make sense of that. But the mother cries in her heart for another lost son. We live in a world that is crazy with violence and hatred. And our hearts cry out as much as our heads can say, whoa, seriously, we live in Omaha. Don't blame us for Missouri. In fact, Nebraska's been saying that for years. Our heads know, but our hearts still ache and long for a love that can unite us, not only with each other, not only with people who might be of a different skin color than us, but for people who look and act different than us, for people who even live with us who look and act different than us. As if somebody says, whose child is that? Wow. Advent is that time where we come and gather together to have the deepest emotions and powers that mold us in our lives, to have them met by God. And that only happens, my friends, when you're in love. When you begin to understand that there is a power that far transcends anything your mind can comprehend, anything your ears can hear or your eyes can see, that love that seems to have no boundary. I was in love once. I had a girlfriend. We seemed to have hit it off. She actually understood my jokes. Thank you. She had 4 sisters. We had an event when she graduated where all 4 of her sisters had a chance to meet me, and they all liked me, which her mother said has never happened before with one of her boyfriends. So there was, I thought, maybe an inkling of a possibility, just a chance that perhaps she might be the one. And then she got a job offer. And her job offer was in Honolulu. Now, we lived in Chicago. And I mean, if she'd have got a job offer, say, in even like Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or Gary, Indiana, or one of the suburbs of Chicago, that would have been okay. But Honolulu is kind of far away. I hear it's nice. And a lot of people in Chicago actually say the weather's better there in Honolulu than Chicago. That was the rumor, at least. So she went to Honolulu. And I stayed in Chicago. And my heart was broken. And as much as my mind could say, well, you know, that's the right thing. This is what she needs to do for her career and the stuff that she wants to do. My head was able to say that. My heart was not buying it. My heart was sad. So one day, now this is, of course, long before cell phones and Facebook. I'm sitting there in my lonely little monastical cell of a room. And I got a letter from my friend Ken. Now, Ken, you got to understand that when Ken graduated from high school, he said to us, quite frankly, that he wanted to travel the world. And in fact, the last time I'd seen Ken had been a couple of years previous to receiving this letter. And he had come and visited me while I was down in Austin, Texas, and we had spent some time together celebrating his last days in the United States because he was going to take his motorcycle and drive from Austin to Los Angeles and then get on a boat and sail to Thailand. And over the course of those intervening 2 or 3 years since we had done that, Ken had sent me postcards and letters from Thailand and Australia and New Zealand and Hong Kong and Japan and the Philippines. When I went back home one Christmas, I ran into his parents, and they had a whole wall in their kitchen devoted to all the places Ken had been. Egypt, Israel, Spain. So I got this letter from Ken, and it said, "Dear Scott, long time no see. Hope life is treating you well." He said, "I talked my girlfriend into moving with me and traveling around these last 6 months. You remember Susie?" I did remember Susie. I actually thought she was way smarter than to quit school and follow Ken, but that's beside the point. Well, we finally bought a yacht. We bought a boat. He said, "You've heard the story, no doubt, about the 2 best days in a boat owner's life. The best day in a boat owner's life is the day he buys a boat. And the second best day in a boat owner's life is the day he sells the boat." And he says, "So I have this boat, but the big problem is it doesn't sail and the motors don't run. So we're stuck. We've got no money. We've got no boat. It's dry docked. And I'm wondering if you could do me a favor." Now, Ken was not one of these guys that was always asking me for things, okay? He was pretty self-sufficient, as my friends go. He had his own car. I didn't have to drive him around. He never asked me to borrow money. So it wasn't like Ken was completely asking me for favors all the time. He said, "I wonder if you could do me a favor. If my mom gave you a plane ticket, could you come out here and fix the motors on my boat for me?" Now, just so you know, my dad owned a trucking company, and I grew up with my dad owning a trucking company, and the motors in most yachts back in those days were the same diesel engines that were in trucks. So in Ken's mind, these were the same things. They're not, but in Ken's mind, they were. So he said, if my mom could do that for it, would you do that? Would you come out and help? So I got on the phone, and I called Ken's mom, and I said, "Ken has sent me a letter saying that if I go out and help him fix his engines and he'll get the boat going, and you give me a round-trip ticket." She goes, "Oh, Scott, would you do that?" And I said, "Sure. I got nothing. I mean, the girl I love is far away, sitting here in Chicago, all alone." She goes, "Great. I'll send you the ticket." I said, "Cool. Where's the boat?" She said, "Oh, it's in Honolulu." He lived 2 apartments down from where the woman I've now been married to for 28 years had her apartment. Our God answers the deepest longings of our heart. Our heads may never be able to figure it out. We'll never understand how a high school friend gets stranded and dry docked 2 apartment buildings from the love of my life. But it is precisely that connection that God makes with us, bringing our hearts together with each other and with God, that calls us this Advent to celebrate. To celebrate not only the birth of God in our world, but the death and resurrection of God so that our hearts can be free. And to find that love. To find that love wherever it may be. Whether here in Blair or even, possibly, in a place like Honolulu. Amen. Let us stand and sing our hymn of the day.